All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to demystify a pretty huge topic: how companies actually figure out their carbon emissions. And you know what? It's way more complex and honestly way more interesting than you might think. We're going to break down the global standard for all this, the GHG protocol. So, when I say a company's carbon footprint, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably factory smokestacks, right? Or maybe the exhaust from a fleet of delivery trucks. And yeah, that's definitely a piece of the puzzle. But as we're about to see, it is truly just the beginning of the story.
Okay, let's dive in. I want you to think about this like we're detectives on a case. To find out the whole truth about a company's real impact, we can't just look at the obvious stuff. We have to look past what's right in front of us and follow the trail of emissions all the way up and all the way down their entire chain of business.
So, every good investigation starts with the most obvious clues, right? The things that are easiest to spot and measure. In the world of carbon accounting, the GHP protocol groups these into two main categories: Scope 1 and Scope 2. Scope 1 is about as straightforward as it gets. These are the emissions that a company is directly responsible for, coming from sources they literally own or control. We're talking about the fuel being burned right there on site in their furnaces or boilers, or in the tanks of their company cars and trucks. This is the absolute core of their day-to-day operational footprint. Now, Scope 2 is where it starts to get a little more interesting because this is where we first see the idea of indirect emissions. A company isn't running a power plant themselves, right? But they buy electricity to keep the lights on and the machines running. So because they're the ones using that power, the emissions created to generate it get chalked up to their footprint. This is our first real step outside the company's own four walls. Okay, but here's the thing. If scopes 1 and 2 are the part of the iceberg you can see sticking out of the water, scope 3 is the gigantic hidden mass underneath. This is where the real scale of a company's carbon footprint is usually hiding. And this is where our investigation gets really fascinating. This slide just lays it out so clearly. Look at the massive leap we're taking here. We're going from things a company directly controls, its own buildings and its energy bill, to everything it influences. That means we have to look at the emissions from their suppliers, from the transportation of their goods, from how you and I actually use their products, and even what happens to those products when we're done with them. It's a lot.
And this is the crucial point. For so many businesses, if they only report on scopes 1 and 2, they are flat out ignoring the biggest part of their impact on the climate. You just can't get an honest picture without tackling scope 3. It's absolutely essential.
So you're probably looking at this and thinking, how on earth do you even begin to map out this huge, tangled web? Well, thankfully, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol helps us out by breaking Scope 3 down into 15 different categories. And we can basically group those into two big buckets: upstream activities, that's everything coming in, and downstream activities, that's everything going out. Let's start with upstream. Think of this as the footprint of the company's entire supply chain. It covers the big one, Category 1, the emissions from all the purchased goods and services they buy. But it goes deeper. It also includes making the capital goods they need, like heavy machinery. It even counts things like business travel, flights, hotels, and the daily commute of every single employee. Each one of these 8 categories helps build a complete picture of all the resources a company pulls in to operate. And then you've got the other side of the coin: downstream emissions. And wow, this is often where the biggest impacts are hiding. This is all about what happens after a product is sold and leaves the factory. Take Category 11, the use of sold products. I mean, think about it. All the electricity an iPhone uses over its lifetime, or all the gasoline a new truck will burn. That's huge. This bucket also covers getting the products to the customer and even what happens at the end of its life. Is it thrown away or is it recycled? For a lot of companies, their true climate responsibility is found right here. Yeah, I know. Looking at that whole list, you're probably asking yourself, how could anyone possibly calculate all of that? It is a massive, massive challenge. I mean, just take Category 1, purchased goods and services. For a big company, that alone could mean chasing down data from thousands of different suppliers. So, to deal with this complexity, the GHG protocol gives you a kind of ladder of methods. The absolute best case scenario, the gold standard, is the supplier-specific method. That's where you get the actual real data directly from your suppliers. But if you can't get that, you can move down the ladder. You can use a mix of real data and industry averages, or even just estimate based on how much money you spent on something. The whole point is to be as accurate as you possibly can with the information you have available. So why? Why go through all this incredibly hard work?
Because this isn't just some academic exercise to get a number on a page. This detailed accounting is an incredibly powerful tool for business strategy, for managing risk, and for taking real, meaningful action on climate change.
I love this quote because it just nails the distinction perfectly. Think of the GHG protocol as the how-to guide. It tells you exactly how to measure all these emissions. Then, that data gets plugged into official reporting rules like the CSRD in Europe, which tells companies how they have to report that information to the public. One is the measurement, the other is the communication. So, when you put it all together, what does this actually let a company do? Well, by mapping out all three scopes, they can finally see their biggest emission hotspots. Is the problem in the raw materials they're buying, or is it in how customers are using their products? Having this incredibly detailed view lets them focus their efforts where it will actually make the biggest difference, manage risks in their supply chain, and talk about their climate strategy with real hard data to back it up. Understanding the full scope of your emissions is such a critical first step. It takes this huge abstract problem and makes it something concrete, something you can actually measure and manage. So the real question it leaves us with is this. Once a company can finally see its entire carbon footprint, the whole iceberg, what's the smartest, most effective, and most responsible thing to do next to actually make it smaller?
And that is our deep dive into scopes 1, 2, and 3. If you found this helpful for getting your head around what a company's true carbon footprint looks like, do me a favor and hit that like button, share it with someone who might be interested, and subscribe for more stuff just like this. Thanks for watching.